What's up, headbangers? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast. And of course, our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our merch and all of our previous episodes. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host, Jason McMaster. And I think it's safe to say we are joined by royalty today. We've got Brian Tatler from Diamond Head on the show today. And I got to give a quick shout to Paul Blackmore. Paul was responsible for connecting us with Brian. So thank you, Paul, if you're listening. We do appreciate that.
Yeah, let's talk about that. How did Paul just reach out and go, hey, do you want to have Brian fucking Tatler on your show?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, thank you, Paul Blackmore.
Yes, thank you,
so
Paul.
very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great conversation today. Brian Tatler, Diamond Head, the legacy. You're all very familiar with it, I'm sure. But it was an honor for him for us to have him on the show. I don't know that it was an honor for him, but it sure was an honor for us.
Well, the nerd in both of us, as well as others, fans of Talk Louder, I feel like are in for a treat. It wasn't just like, dude, you're awesome the whole time. So I'm actually patting myself on the back because of that, because at every turn I wanted to go, dude, dude, you're awesome, and I refrained from that. There was enough sort of like legacy and legend and crafting and timeline. In mention of, the obvious things. We talk about Metallica quite a bit. He mentions the opportunities that Metallica has created for Diamond Head, and you'll know what I mean when you listen to the episode here. But what an unbelievable time we had today with someone who, believe it or not, as Dave has already said, basically had a play in shaping your record collection.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's safe to say that thrash metal might not even exist without bands like Diamond Head and the whole new wave of British heavy metal. Those bands speak often and freely about the influence of the bands from England around the late 70s, early 80s, the new wave of British heavy metal. Metallica, of course, has covered Diamond Head. We'll let Brian tell the story, but like I said, my point being, I think it's safe to say that if you like the Big Four and all of the bands that they inspired, it's safe to say that they might not exist without the influence of Diamond Head and others. So,
well, I one more nugget. I just feel like it was something that I didn't know what to expect him to say at the question about, ironically, he's, by the way, Brian is now taking over for Paul Quinn on guitar in Saxon.
Right.
He's got some big shoes to fill. He'll tell you his feelings about it and how excited he actually is about that. But when I mentioned Metallica's very first gig, which was they played 2 originals and the rest of it was pretty much Diamond Head covers. I got to stay tuned. You get to see his reaction. And I think that you can have an idea of close.
As they were opening for Saxon. Don't forget that
that's
part.
That's the rub there.
There's full circle there, yeah.
Yeah, like Metallica's opening for Saxon at their very first gig. And now Brian, who wrote Metallica's set list that night, is playing for the headliner that night, which is just perfect.
Yeah. Well, he couldn't have been a greater guy. Really enjoyed the conversation with him. Very humble and very forthcoming with, you could tell he's grateful for his lot in life, and he was just a joy to talk to. So really happy to have had him on the Talk Louder podcast today. Brian Tatler from Diamond Head. Brian, joining us from your home in the UK. Thank you for taking the time to join a couple of Texans halfway around the world. We appreciate it.
Couple of Texans?
Yes, sir. Yeah. We're in the Austin, Texas area. So
Right.
yeah.
Nice place.
Yeah, we've got plenty to talk about, but let's start with the beginning. Take us all the way back. How did you initially get hooked on rock and roll? What made you want to play?
Right, hooked on rock and roll. I would imagine. I mean, I had an older brother, so my brother Dave is 6 years older than me, and he liked rock. So he would buy Led Zeppelin albums and Deep Purple and Black Sabbath, and he would go and see bands. I remember him going to see Black Sabbath at Birmingham Town Hall, 1971, possibly.
Wow.
And he bought a guitar. I think he probably wanted to be like Tony Iommi, learn to play the guitar and those riffs and all that. So I think having an older brother who happened to have good taste in rock music, as well as he played guitar and he played in a local band, all rubbed off on me. And I can remember being fascinated by the equipment. I'd go and watch them do a gig or watch them practice. And the equipment was, I'm probably 11, 12 at this point. And I just thought it was all very exciting, and then he would take me to see bands when I was probably from about the age of 12 onwards. Occasionally he'd come in from work and he'd say, I've got a spare ticket to see a band, like we went to see Can, for example, that German krautrock band. He really liked them. And we went to see Gentle Giant and Black Sabbath, and who else? 10 years after. And so I'd just go with him. I didn't really know the band. The first band I ever saw with him was a band called Amon Dore, who again, a krautrock band. And they played, I think, Birmingham Town Hall. And a very strange band. I didn't know any of the songs, but I just liked it. I mean, it's a big event, isn't it, when you first gig with the lights and the equipment and the sound, the volume is quite shocking to a kid. But yeah, so that, I think Dave has got a lot to answer for in that he inspired me to get into music and to learn to play the guitar, really, because I could just go to him and say, how do you play an E chord or Smoke on the Water or something, and he'd show me, and that's it. Yeah.
Wow.
What was the first record you bought with your own money?
Okay, I bought 2 singles on the same day. I bought T-Rex, 20th Century Boy, and the Sweet Hellraiser, I think.
Both excellent.
Blockbuster, one of those 2.
Yeah.
Wow, off to a good start.
So yeah, sort of that's sort of early 70s, isn't it? That's maybe 73 sort of period. So I'd be at 12, 13. So that was my time. But mind you, the first album I ever bought was Led Zeppelin 2. So I think I did really well there.
Yeah.
With my first album was Led Zeppelin 2. My second album was Machine Head. So what a great start. I got right into the Richie Blackmore and Jimmy Page, and of course wanted to be like those guys.
Yeah.
Well, you've done well.
I think so. Yeah.
It's a good start, a good education.
Yeah.
Diamond Head, of course, is cited as one of the forerunners of the new wave of British heavy metal, and we all know that punk music had a large influence on that style of music. What punk bands were you listening to, or were among your favorites at that early stage?
So John Peel was very important to us. I don't know if you know of John Peel.
Yeah.
You're nodding. I can't remember your names. Hang on, it's probably on the screen. Is it? So you're Dave, and you're Jason.
Correct.
Sorry.
Yeah. That's okay.
So yeah,
we've been called worse as well.
I can see Dave nodding. So yes, so John Peel was important. John Peel had a week every night Monday to Friday. He would play 2 hours, and he would play all the new stuff. He wasn't interested in playing big bands, that already had exposure. He would be looking for the latest new band that was appearing, and they might have made their first record, and if he liked it, he'd play it on his show. And a lot of bands got their first ever radio exposure through John Peel. And so he picked up very quickly on punk rock, and he would be playing the Damned, the Jam, the Ramones, Sex Pistols, Boomtown Rats, whatever was fresh and new and coming out of, mainly England, but I mean, obviously Ramones is US. And I would tape. I'd sit there with a cassette recorder and I'd tape, like millions of others. Something would come on. Oh, that's good. I'd tape that. And I had these little cassettes with punk rock on and all that, and I found it exciting because it was normally quite fast, and it felt like I could do that. I did feel that our bands became a bit heavy rock, progressive rock, and all that. And I'd be listening to bands like, say, Yes or Pink Floyd or Genesis, and admiring them. But I didn't know how to play like that, or a song like, say, Achilles' Last Stand or The Song Remains the Same, works of art. And for a struggling guitarist who's only just sort of mastered his bar chords and things like that, I have no idea how to play a song like The Song Remains the Same or Kashmir or whatever. So, but I could copy the Pistols and I could copy the Damned or whatever, and then they started appearing on TV, on Top of the Pops and the Old Grey Whistle Test. And so again, I could think, right, you've got 2 chords in it. It's got an A in it and a D in it and an E, and that was inspiring because I thought I can't spend I'm never going to be able to play like Richie Blackmore. It's not going to happen. But I thought I could play like Steve Jones, so let's go. I couldn't wait. Let me at him,
Right.
I love Steve's playing, and
Yeah.
I feel like he's a better player than he leads on.
Yeah, probably. That first Pistols album is amazing.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's a great rock and roll record.
Totally. Energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're forming Diamond Head in the late 70s, and your peers at that time, Iron Maiden, Def Leppard, Saxon, and we're going to get to Saxon later. These bands are starting to, up and coming along with Diamond Head. You had some early gigs supporting Iron Maiden, AC/DC, but I understand that you had some difficulties with management, and maybe that was part of the reason that you weren't along for the ride, along with Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, etc.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, of course. So Diamond Head formed in 1976, as probably did a lot of the new wave of British heavy metal bands. Partly, punk was very encouraging because that sort of appeared late 76, early 77. And it was a bit DIY, and you could do it yourself, make your own records, to send demos in. So I think a lot of the bands just thought, right, we can do this. We'll make our own demos and things like that. So I would imagine Maiden were doing the same in London. Def Leppard were doing the same in Sheffield. All inspired by the big bands, the classic bands of the 70s, because we were almost spoiled for choice. I realize now in hindsight, 70s are my favorite decade for music. And, to list off the incredible rock bands that were around in the 70s, it was so inspiring, and each, every couple of months, somebody'd bring out a brilliant album. Like, say, I can definitely remember things like Sad Rings of Destiny, Blowing Me Away. Or Rainbow, or UFO, and Thin Lizzy. So it was so inspiring, all these awesome bands, and they all sounded different from one another. There wasn't just they all sound this way or that way. They're totally original bands. It just inspired bands like myself and your Leopards and Maidens to probably form a band, try and get a record deal, try and do what our peers had done, and do the same thing. Now, as you know, Iron Maiden signed to EMI, which is probably the best rock label in the UK for breaking rock bands. And Def Leppard was signed to Phonogram, which was probably the second best label. So once EMI had their New Wobberham band, which is Iron Maiden, and Phonogram had Def Leppard, then they sort of didn't want other bands after that. So we struggled to get a deal. I think we've got a few offers from maybe RCA and Arista and some of the other labels, but we had sort of amateur management, just local guys who was trying to help, trying to do the right thing, but they didn't have the experience. Leopard had amateur managers as well at first, but they managed to get a leg up with Peter Mensch once they signed to Leave the Creds. Yeah. And Iron Maiden were lucky to have Rod Smallwood, who turned out to be a brilliant manager. But we had a guy who owned a cardboard box factory in a place called Lye in the Midlands. And so even though he was enthusiastic and he had a little bit of money to put into the band, like we could buy a van and we bought a little PA and things like that, he didn't have the contacts and he didn't have the experience. So he sort of learned on the job. And it probably, ultimately didn't impress the label. So when we did eventually get a record deal in 1982, the record label didn't like our management. They thought they were out of their depth, to use their word. And so, it got to a point where it was either change management or we'll drop you. And we didn't change management.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a life lesson.
Sure. Well, you did manage to eventually get Lightning to the Nations out.
Yeah.
And
thank God.
Yeah, right. And my understanding is that you initially pressed only 1,000 copies of it,
right.
and it was only available in a plain white sleeve because you were basically kind of shopping it around as a demo. My question is, of those 1,000 copies in the plain white sleeve, have you ever heard of any of those copies selling for an absurd amount of money after all these years?
Absolutely. It is a bit of a new wave of British heavy metal collector's item.
Sure.
Because there were only 1,000. And because of Metallica covering 4 songs off that album, it's become a bit of a thing. I've got the white label album.
Right.
So yeah, we did 1,000 copies, white sleeve, white label, nothing on it at all. Didn't say Diamond Head, nothing on the cover, and we sort of looked at it at the time as a sort of demo album. We kind of figured that we'd go to the label and play it to them, and they'd think, oh, this is great, and if they can get it together enough to make an album, then they must be good and all that. And I don't know if we actually thought they would just release it, or if they thought, well, we'll re-record it and we'll use a bigger studio and spend more time and money on it. We were probably a bit naive that, we didn't quite know what was to do for the best, but at least we had 1,000 copies that we could sell at gigs and mail order, as you said. So we did that, and that would probably help keep the band going with crew, with petrol, and get us up and down the country. Because by this point, we'd had a bit of exposure on the Friday Rock Show. We'd had a couple of singles. Jeff Barton had done a big piece on us when we opened for Iron Maiden at the Lyceum. We'd opened for AC/DC as well, as you mentioned, at the Newcastle and Southampton. So those were monumentally big gigs for us.
Sure.
We'd only done maybe 30 gigs or something when we got those dates with AC/DC. And we worked out that the management, which was Peter Mensch, was looking at Diamond Head with a view to manage the band. And we only worked that out afterwards, but he came into our dressing room and we had a little chat, which was nice. And I thought that was perfectly natural. Oh, AC/DC's managers come to say hello. But of course, he was checking us out. He was sounding us out, seeing what we like, see if we had the right kind of stuff. The ambition to conquer the world.
The X factor.
Yeah. Ultimately, he didn't. He signed Def Leppard, but it was another lesson, to learn. And we were very flattered that he offered us those 2 dates and that we got to do them because we were huge AC/DC fans. So that's always been an amazing experience that we supported AC/DC.
What year was that?
1980. So it was Bon Scott's last 2 ever gigs.
Whoa! Wow!
Yeah, he died.
Legendary.
A few weeks later.
Yeah.
Which was complete freak out to us because, of course, not only were we huge fans, but we just got to know him a little bit and we'd met him and got his autograph.
Yeah.
And then, what a shocker.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was, January 1980.
Yeah. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
There's another interesting factoid about Diamond.
That's just crazy. I have a first off, the White Label Lightning record. I bet I can count on one hand, of course, some friends who own that.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm not one of them.
Here in Texas. Dave is not one of them.
I'm not one of them.
He's one of my friends, but he's not
that's
one.
Amazing that he's managed to get hold of a copy because it is rare.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. I've got 1 copy, I think. That's all I've got.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask, and this is kind of, I don't know, it might be coming out of nowhere, but I don't think there's any proper time to just ask you a question. So I'm just going to ask it. Did you ever meet back then, pre-1980, did you ever meet a young kid from Denmark named Lars Ulrich?
Not no. Now, we met Lars in July 1981.
A little bit later.
Yes, a bit later.
And
he bought his copy, didn't he? We'd made Lightning to the Nations. We did the mail order in Sounds, and Lars would get his copy of Sounds over in LA and sent for a copy and got his, and then wrote back to the address where he got it from and said, I like this album, etc.
Sure.
Et
wow, amazing. I just give Lars a lot of credit for, and I know that there are others. He's probably the most popular fan who was championing bands like you guys and many more. Merciful Fate.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
they've always worn their influences on their sleeve, haven't they? They haven't shied away.
So smart.
From where it came from or what inspired them to want to form a band. And the fact that they covered us and other bands is brilliant because a lot of bands don't cover bands. Like AC/DC don't do covers, do they? Or Black Sabbath, but Metallica have done lots of covers over the years, and it's a brilliant payback for the people that inspired them, and people like me, it's helped enormously in many ways. And whereas they could have just sort of copied us a bit and thought that's a bit like, Dead
well,
Red.
I think they did both.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Exactly.
They yes. I'll say that.
And you're right. It's the biggest compliment, especially after you have a built-in audience who's going to buy your records no matter what.
That's right.
Because I don't own I'm a giant Metallica fan. which means I'm a fan of Diamond Head. But at the same time, to move on, they covered you guys and everybody else after they had this, big footprint. So, of course, it helped all of those bands automatically, whether it be monetarily or, someone was like, well, wow, who is this? I really like this arrangement. Who the hell is this? And they go to off to the record store. And that, I mean, you win your fans one at a time anyway. I've always felt that way. If you hear something that you like, go buy the record. Don't just look for something that resembles it. I guess there's once again, doesn't really seem random while we're talking about this, but I guess my question is, how do you feel? What's your perspective now, or even back then, maybe when you heard word of Lars's new band Metallica's first gig at the Whiskey, opening for Saxon, playing 2 original songs and 6 Diamond Head songs?
Yeah. Well, I only found out about that years later, of course.
Okay.
But fascinating.
Very.
That, how they've gone. I've followed their career, of course, since 84.
Yeah.
And I've absolutely blown away by what they've achieved. I mean, everybody is really, that they started with such a humble beginning, such a garage band, basically, sort of uncommercial garage band, and go to the very, very top to become the biggest heavy metal band of all time. It's an unbelievable journey. One that even they probably, can't believe has happened.
It's monolithic.
It's what I wanted to do. Obviously they did what I wanted to do, and me and a million others, but they actually did it. And I've always got incredible respect, because I know how hard it is.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. I have to admit, the first time I ever heard a Diamond Head song was courtesy of
Creeping Death.
The Metallica Creeping Death picture disc. Of course, Am I Evil is on the back side of this.
Of course.
When was the first time you heard Metallica playing a Diamond Head song?
That was it. That Creeping Death 12-inch single.
Yeah.
And it had Blitzkrieg on as well, didn't it?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it. So Lars sent us a copy. I mean, they were on Music for Nations in Europe. And he must have got, I think it was Martin Hooker, to send me and Sean a copy. And we listened to it. And we were very flattered, because, of course, they were the first band ever to cover a Diamond Head song. So that was exciting. Somebody bothered to cover one of our songs and work out the solo and all that business. But they'd not only done it as a cassette or a demo, or done it live, they'd actually made a record, and it was on their single, the B-side of their single. So that was the first time. I didn't see them until 86, when they were doing Master of Puppets, and they came and they played Birmingham Odeon, and Lars called and said, we're playing in Birmingham tonight, because of course Birmingham is the nearest city to me. It's about 10 miles away. Okay, so I just caught the boys up to Birmingham and witnessed them perform, Master of Puppets and Battery, and that amazing album in 86, and it blew me away. And he said, come up and do Am I Evil with us,
Amazing. I was waiting for you to say that part.
Yeah, brilliant. I hadn't took a guitar or anything, but they just said, well, we could, use one of James's Flying V's or something. Yeah. And we did Am I Evil? And then at some point it morphed into Damage Incorporated. And so I run off the stage at that point. I don't know how to play that one.
Oh, that's hilarious. You were probably like, oh, well, time for me to go. Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's so excellent. I'm sure you were just.
And of course, that was Cliff Burton. So I got to see Cliff.
Yeah.
And meet him backstage. And of course, they were all lovely guys. I only knew Lars, but he would introduce me. This is James. This is Kirk. This is Cliff. And that was nice, and that they were obviously very pleased to meet me, because I'm an influence,
Yes.
And of course, Metallica aren't yet what they are. You know, they're still on their way up. But I remember thinking how well they went down. I thought, wow, this is the first time they've been to Birmingham. And they went down a storm. You know, the place wasn't full, but there've got to be 1,800 people in there. And the crowd went crazy. I was thinking, there's definitely something going on here. You know, there's a vibe. The fans were so, you know, crazy. Even then in 86.
Yeah.
So I couldn't work that out. How have they done this? How is this the first time they've ever played in Birmingham? When I'd had to do the clubs and the little, you know, horrible clubs where you played to 20 people and build till we reached Birmingham Odeon.
Yeah.
And yet Metallica just seemed to hit Birmingham Odeon. That sold 1,800 tickets, and the place went nuts.
Well, I don't have all of the. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't have all the answers, but I know how tenacious Lars is, and there's also you pile the cherry on top of the ice cream with Peter Minch.
There you go again.
And, I mean, I had to bring it up because I feel like there's something about that magical.
Great management.
Thing. Yes,
definitely helps. I don't think it's 100% because, as you said, I mean, Lars is a big part of this.
Yes,
sure. But
the music,
good management, because you don't want to be wasting your time doing things that you don't need to do. You need good advice, good direction, you know.
Well,
record company support, a good agent.
Yes. Well, I've actually said this in certain circles, and I don't believe it to really hold much water, but it would probably hold some water in the fact that some people, and this is all arguable, some people might have said, I feel better saying that. And I love Lars's playing, but some people feel like, and there may be some truth to this, that Lars is very, as I've said, tenacious and business minded, to where he was the first guy to get up in the morning and have tea or coffee and get going and on the phone and working. And he paid more attention to the next move that the band was going to make before he would practice his fucking drums.
Yeah. That's right.
What's wrong with that? I don't think that there's anything wrong with that if you have your eye on what it is. I mean, I've got to get up in the morning because these guys don't know what they're going to eat for breakfast.
Yeah.
So let's think about that just as much as we can think about writing a song as cool as Shoot Out the Lights.
Yeah, I think Lars was brilliant at managing Metallica. I think I heard him say that Mensch and Bernstein help him manage Metallica. And I've been in his house, and you know, I'd wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning or something, 10 o'clock, and he's already awake. He's already on the phone. He's talking to Japan. He's sorting out a tour. He's sorting out this and that for like a good hour before he even puts the phone down. And hello, good morning, you know, type thing.
Right.
So I'm thinking, all right. He's definitely Mr. Switched on, isn't he? Business minded.
Yes, I learned. I feel like I learned that quick about him just by paying attention to the moves that the band made. I met those guys on their first tour when they were supporting Raven, and I was already a huge Raven fan. And of course, I bought Kill 'Em All the day it came out because the record store had a promo copy, and they saw me coming. They knew I was going to love it. Oh my God! I hadn't even set my foot into the door, and they said, "You're going to love this. Put the headphones on. Sit over here. Drop the needle. Just to, you know." And as soon as Hit the Lights comes in, I'm looking over at the record store owner, and they're going like this. So it was all over after that. No. I bought countless, like, I guess you could just call them new wave of British heavy metal compilation records. And you guys were always on it. There was always this slew, and Def Leppard and Iron Maiden as well. You know, early Running Free, you know, some Def Leppard song that they haven't played live in 40 years or whatever.
Yes.
but then there was all of this other stuff that didn't translate post the release of said compilation record. I would say hundreds, if not 1,000 other new wave or British heavy metal, which became a term after, I'm going to mess this up, I don't want to say the wrong name. These articles started coming out. Who's the guy that coined the phrase?
Alan Lewis from Sound.
Yeah,
it was Jeff Barton and Alan Lewis, but Barton seemed to be the guy that would go out and do the interviews. But Alan Lewis was the editor, and I think he came up with the name, the New Wave of British Heavy Metal.
Yeah, and you guys and Motorhead and you know the rest were mentioned, but of course, you guys were translating, and you guys were leaving some sort of like scar in the earth, that was creating momentum and virus, a positive rock and roll virus, and hence the article. These compilation records that me and my friends were buying in 81, 82, 83 at the record stores. Wow, I've heard of these guys, because we worshipped Kerrang magazine. It was more Sounds wasn't as popular as Kerrang for whatever reason in Texas, So we're reading and hearing about all these bands, and I watched a documentary years later. I don't remember what the documentary was called, and I think it was like a burned copy on a DVD or something, and it was hours long, and they're talking to all of these journalists from the UK and beyond, and they called that movement like a trend, like a fad, or an overnight kind of thing where let's go back to you mentioning Iron Maiden and Def Leppard, and back then I feel like it was the next move for a young band to make a 45, a single, a record, instead of cassettes. Maybe weren't popular at the time. They were kind of a new thing or something. And so
we had cassettes and all that, but it always just looked more professional if you could make a record.
Sure.
And you could also give a record to a DJ. Like there was rock clubs around the country, like Rock City and things. And if you could give them a single, they could play it on their, turntable, and it would be like, this band are coming up here next week. This is their single. So it was important to make. Def Leppard did the EP, Iron Maiden did the Soundhouse tapes, etc. And so it did seem, we've got to sort of compete. You had to make a record.
Oh yeah.
I want to ask
regarding Kerrang. Kerrang didn't start till 82.
Okay.
Whereas Sounds was a 70s thing, and it's of course Sounds picked up on and christened the new wave of British heavy metal. And it just Kerrang appeared once it became so popular, and they probably thought we could actually do a magazine just about heavy rock, rather than Sounds was reggae and pop and post-punk and new romantics, and you'd be looking for your little bit of information about a new wave of British heavy metal band. But amongst all the other styles.
Kerrang magazine was a staple. Those first, I'll say 50 issues maybe, are like golden to me.
Right.
I mean, you learned about so many things. I have to admit, the first time I heard about a little new band from Los Angeles, not San Francisco, called Metallica, was in fucking Kerrang magazine.
Right. Yeah.
So
I remember the advert where with Raven, it said Metallica and Raven with the two logos about the same sort of size.
Yeah.
In the first ever edition of Kerrang was a piece about Diamond Head, a little piece. Sonic Stormtroopers from Stourbridge or something like that.
Very good.
That's
very
great.
Good.
Yeah. I wanted to ask one more Metallica question, and then we'll get back to Diamond Head, because I don't want to beat this to death.
All right.
but you're so inextricably linked. It's hard to ignore. But I also think, besides Metallica covering Diamond Head, they did it 4 times.
I know.
Is it 4 cover tunes? 4, yeah. which is incredible. So not only is it, I would guess, an honor that they covered one song, they covered four and recorded them and made them available.
Incredible.
And so,
they must have just appreciated the writing or something, because they wouldn't have done it otherwise. They must have just thought there's something. I understood why they did Am I Evil, and then I thought, oh, it was great that they did Helpless, but then they did The Prince, and then they did It's Electric. And people have said, well, they might as well do the other three off Lightning to the Nations, just have a whole album of Metallica covers. It is incredible. I'm very lucky. There's a lot of new wave of British heavy metal bands that didn't get covered, like Angel Witch, for example, or Saxon.
Right.
And I bet they all, would love to have been covered by Metallica.
Sure.
And we were spoiled almost with four. So
let me ask you, if I may. So, what do the royalties bring to your bank account?
Oh, here we go with Dave asking what's in your wallet.
Well, I can't put a figure on it. But
okay, yeah, I don't. Go ahead.
It's been very, very useful, and I've been earning money for over 30 years. So
that's beautiful, isn't that? Yeah.
That's great mail. We call that mailbox money when it
amazing.
Just
While I'm asleep in bed, it's somewhere making some cash for me.
Yeah, that's
a beautiful thing. I wanted to comment. You were saying, and this is not so much. Well, okay, it is about Metallica. Then I promise we're going to move on. The deal is this, Brian. I feel like you being, if I may, the mastermind behind how the songs they chose for a reason. They're a fans band, and people seem to forget that they have all the money. They're the biggest fucking band, and whatever. When you brass tacks, you go back down to the bottom where it's your hands, your intellectual property, creating these riffs that you put together in one song.
Yeah.
That seems like it might go back to maybe your progressive rock band roots, where there might be 5 or 7 or more riffs and time changes in one song. And there's 2 or 3 songs that Metallica covered that have that sort of like song map.
Yeah.
And I feel like when those guys, Metallica, are writing, were maybe not so much anymore. They're kind of a hydra now, stylistically. They're growing, and that's great. But the point I'm making it specifically here, and even on the record, all of the records up to a point are related to the way that a Diamond Head song sort of plays out, if you will.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? Do you understand what I mean about how there's so many?
Epics is the word that we used to describe the big songs, like Am I Evil, like Helpless, like Sucking My Love.
Yeah.
We wanted to write epics. We didn't particularly want to write hit singles. We did a couple of singles. We did Shoot Out the Lights. We did Sweet and Innocent, etc.
Those are great songs, though. Those are great.
Thank you. But what we really wanted to do, I suppose, was be like a Led Zeppelin and write these massive big songs, or like War Pigs or something, which is 6 minutes long or something. We really got off on that. And we would keep coming up with riffs. It wasn't just me. Sean would come up with riffs, and we would write these songs, and we'd add to them. Am I Evil? We've probably spent a year on Am I Evil, and we'd keep adding bits to it.
Wow.
It's almost like you come up with another riff. You think, oh, we could put that in there after the solo or at the beginning. And we were very good at writing together, Sean and I. We absolutely, matched. And we could put a lot of time and effort, and it became our thing. We just wanted to be great. We wanted to write great songs. I always felt we were competing with as I said earlier, the 70s, the amazing bands from the 70s. So we wanted to be at least as good as these classic bands. We didn't want to be also-rans. We wanted to be one of the greatest bands of all time. In our little naive world, we aimed extremely high. So at least in the end, the songs are out there and doing their thing. And, we still play them to this day, and they still sound great now. So we at least got that right, the songwriting.
Right.
Well, I feel like it's great to talk to you about this part of, the humble beginnings of these songs, and you guys, I can see you guys at the rehearsal room throwing these ideas together in my head, and it's fantastical. At the same time, I also, after listening to you speak, I'm realizing as I'm hearing you talk about it, I mean, Iron Maiden wrote the same way up to a point. Their songs were epic, and these giant battlefields and different views, the back of a horse, or it's fucking spaceship or whatever. It didn't matter. They could take you on these journeys through a song, epic. And Iron Maiden's not the Merciful Fate did that. All of these bands had these 7, 8, 9 minutes. Black Sabbath, the song Black Sabbath, as you mentioned, War Pigs. There's riffs and time changes, and all right, now it's the swing part. All right, let's go back to the 4 on the floor. It's and it's one fucking song, and it's really brilliant. And thank God that all of you guys, especially Diamond Head, did this so that Metallica could spread the word on. You can write any kind of fucking song you want and still be the top dog. You don't have to write a hit single.
That's right. Yeah, well, that's obviously Led Zeppelin didn't have hit singles anyway, did they? They sort of didn't need to. They made that their thing. And we probably naively thought, well, we don't have to do that either. We can just write these great big songs and become like Led Zeppelin. And it wasn't quite that simple, but that's sort of probably what seeped into our minds, and we thought that's what we want to do. We didn't, Top of the Pops is all well and good, but I didn't fancy just being on Top of the Pops. I wanted to be, we went to see Led Zeppelin in '79 at Nebworth, 200,000 people. And you think, I want to do that. I want to be. Yeah.
Yeah, you and everybody else. Exactly. I want to do that too.
There's a lot of competition, but I'm still going to try.
Sure,
absolutely.
Man. So I love your attitude, man. It's really it shows strength, and you're really got your feet on the ground. You're a rock fan, Yeah.
I wouldn't do it if I didn't like it.
Of course. Right. You've had 3 different singers in Diamond Head now, I believe.
That's right.
So how would you summarize each of those chapters in the Diamond Head history with a different front man in each of those 3 areas?
Obviously, Sean was the original, and it all stemmed out from that period. So we did the 3 albums, Light Into the Nations, Borrowed Time in Canterbury. Then we were dropped by the label, and we struggled, and then split in '85. But that could say that was the golden period, the period with Sean, because that's when we were at our probably most creative, and that's probably a lot of the legacies come from that period. The songs we play in the set now, probably still dominated by those first, few albums, and then the band reformed in 1990, and we did another album with Sean called Death and Progress, but the band split again in '93, and then we tried to get it back together in the early noughties, but it didn't really go as well as we'd have liked, and so we got in a singer called Nick Tart, who was great and helped us move forward, and we were able to do festivals all over Europe. We did a massive tour with Megadeth of Europe that was fantastic. We went to the States for the first time. So Nick lasted about 10 years, and then he and his family moved to Brisbane. So that became tricky and expensive. So we had to replace Nick, and I said we need a guy who's in England, ideally. It's just too expensive. You can't operate with a singer who lives in Australia if you're an English band and you haven't got millions of pounds. So we got in Rasmus, who turned out to be incredible talent, and has given us a new lease of life. So we've done 2 studio albums with Raz, and we re-recorded the debut album, Lightning to the Nations,
Wow.
in 2020 with Raz as well. So Raz has sang on 3 studio albums, and we write well together, and he's a nice guy. So that's been going great. He joined in 2014.
How did you find him?
A friend of a friend, somebody recommended him. They'd been to college with him, I think, because he studied musical performance. He did a degree course or something like that. And she said, I know this great singer. He lives in London, but he's great. So we got in touch, and he was great. He came up to the Midlands and rehearsed with us. We started doing gigs with him, and I asked him to join because he was just mega.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned a tour with Megadeth, which makes absolute sense. But I was reading up on your history, and I think I recall an early tour with April Wine.
Yes,
and to me that sounds like a strange mix. Can you tell us a little bit about that tour and the audience and how you were received opening for April Wine?
Okay, yeah, that does make less sense. We thought that as well at the time. They'd got an album out called Nature of the Beast.
Yeah. It's a good record.
81.
Yep.
Yes. Start that one with the cowbells. Ding, 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 down, down, down. And they would open with that every night. But Diamond Head were quite a hot band at that moment. So we probably got that gig because we had a good audience following, and we were probably helping them to sell tickets. So we would go down really well on that tour. There was about 10 dates just around the UK. And it was good for us. We went down very well. We had a lot of young guys coming to see Diamond Head. And because we'd be getting all over the country finally, London, Glasgow, Manchester. And so it was okay. It was a bit of a mismatch. But, that happens from time to time, doesn't it?
Sure.
There's that story about Jimi Hendrix opening for the Monkees.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I remember one of the first times I ever heard Iron Maiden. They were touring through Texas as the opening act for 38 Special, and I thought, that's bizarre.
Well, I feel like, just to show my age here, I feel like it was normal, especially in the 70s,
right? Yeah,
for it to be mixed match. I mean, Journey toured with AC/DC in the States.
Right. Yes.
It would be
Kiss and Rush.
Yeah, and they were the best of friends. I mean, and it was just a rock celebration of music.
I think that's a good thing, really, rather than it has to be, similar sort of style. And
right.
Why not?
It's not a war between fans or styles or anything. It's a celebration of music, much like a festival. It just happens to be 2 or 3 bands. No, it's quite normal back then.
Tell us about the Saxon gig. That's your latest thing. I guess you're about to do some dates here in another month or so, or tell us how that came together.
Yes, so the first gig is on July 7th. We're playing in Athens, and there's 2 rehearsals before that in Germany. So I've been learning the set here at home for the past 8 weeks possibly. So I'm doing well. I'm every day doing a bit, and that came about. I mean, we're on the same label, and we've got the same manager, Adam Parsons from Siren. So I think we've got to know each other over the years. We've done festivals with them. We've done support dates with them, and then last year we did a big tour. We did 33 dates across Europe and the UK, and I think everybody was getting on really well, and they probably realised I'm a nice guy, I can play, etc.
Yeah.
So I got the call in March from the manager to say Paul Quinn's stepping down. Would I be interested in taking over from Paul? And I said yes. absolutely.
Of
And,
course.
and that's it. So I've been learning the set ever since, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be,
Yeah, man.
it's so exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think I when I heard the news, I got really excited, and it just made so much sense. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
it's great because Diamond Head's great. It's always been my baby, and we've been going a long, long time. But to have a fresh challenge now at my age and this time of my life, a new set to learn, a new band to go out with, and they're of a higher level, a tour bus level,
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, Saxon will headline a festival like a Wacken or something.
Yeah.
Whereas Diamond Head, we've done Wacken, but we'd be on a smaller stage at say 2:00 in the afternoon, 3:00 in the afternoon, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a big jump for me, but I'm excited for the challenge. I think it's great. I thought it was fabulous of them to offer it to me. I'm really grateful.
Is there any talk of this being permanent, or where are we with that?
I think it's too early to say.
Yeah.
I think I've got to at least do one gig, I think.
Sure.
And then maybe we'll talk again. But I mean, who knows? But I'd like to. But I think we've probably got to do some gigs first.
We've had Nigel on our show a couple of times, and the last time we talked to him, we sort of like tried to get some more information out of him too, and he's basically saying the same thing as you are. So.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So that's probably how it is.
Yeah.
We don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to ask, I want to get the current status of Diamond Head. I know you're about to go out with Saxon. You'll be busy with that, but what might we expect in terms of an album or tour or future plans for Diamond Head?
Yeah, we've got some festivals. We're playing Time to Rock Festival in Sweden. We're doing Leyendas del Rock in Spain, and we're doing a gig with Volbeat in Austria at the end of this month.
Cool.
And we've not played with Volbeat before, but it's a big outdoor festival, like apparently 9,500 people. That's sold out. So that's quite exciting for us. We've had new material, for the past few years. I did a lot of writing in lockdown, like everybody else, but we haven't managed to finish any of that yet. And we also recorded a lot of the dates on the last tour. So we hope to do a live album, but it's again finding time to mix it and get it together. And but that's sort of the plans we have at the moment. We definitely want to do a live album. Definitely want to do more dates and things. It's just people are busy. I've got lives and fitting in around.
Sure.
This is an added complication in a way for Diamond Head that I'm now touring with Saxon, but. We want to try and make it work.
Sure. Last question from me, and then if Jason doesn't have anything, we'll let you go. But I wanted to know, after all these decades and all you've accomplished, what is your proudest musical achievement?
I think the songwriting, the fact that the songs we wrote 40 years ago still sound good today, and we're still people still like to hear them and ask for those songs, and I'm happy to play them. That's my biggest achievement, I think, the songs. And Metallica have been, incredible that they've covered Diamond Head as well, given us all kinds of opportunities, and so without those songs, we wouldn't be having this conversation, kind of thing. That's my legacy, really, and they'll probably be still listening to some of those songs after I'm gone.
Sure, yeah. You've definitely created something that's going to stand the test of time. It already has. So,
when the Big Four decides to have, members of Slayer and Megadeth and Anthrax on stage with Metallica as this beast of a band with I don't know how many people were on the stage, 4 drummers and 8 guitar players, and the song that they play comes from your brain, and your heart.
That's right. Written in my bedroom in 1979.
It's fucking mind blowing. That's amazing.
I thought that at the time. I thought of all the songs they could have picked. There's lots and lots of heavy metal songs that spring to mind. Oh, they could have done that. Could have done that. And now let's do "Am I Evil?" Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, no complaints there. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been an honor. I mean, you are the architect of all the music that Jason and I love.
Thank you. Well, there's a few others, but I appreciate the compliment.
Yeah, obviously you're not alone, but without you, the landscape might look a lot different, and we really like the way it looks. So thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
And maybe we'll see you out on the road with Saxon. Saxon gets through North America quite often, so we wish you all the luck with that and continued success with Diamond Head when you get back to Diamond Head.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to touring with Saxon. If we can do the US, that'd be great. I haven't been to the US for about, I think 2018 was the last time with Diamond.
Your last tour, one of my many projects, we opened for you guys in San Antonio.
Oh, right.
It wasn't. It might have been on like a Tuesday or a Wednesday night too. I don't remember there being a lot of folks there, but that's okay. I mean,
that's right.
We were excited to be there with you guys, and you guys gave it hell, and it was amazing. So just to walk away from that and go, fuck yeah, I was in the room with the guys in Diamond Head. This is kind of sure, it's a big heavy metal nerd part of my brain that comes out, but it all goes back to, reading Kerrang and sounds and all of that stuff too,
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us today, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Welcome. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Brian Tatler from Diamond Head on the Talk Louder podcast.